Hey, SadBoi here with a Shorty.
Shorty.
And today we're discussing the new Hellraiser. This movie released on Hulu on October 7th of 2022. It's a new installment to the movie series created by Clive Barker. Clive Barker was involved as a producer in this new version, but he wasn't a writer or director. His absence from the creative element of the movie can be felt. The movie had all the parts, but none of the heart. It lacked some aspects which made the earlier movies so special, mostly the originality, which I guess can't really be put on the writers or the director. Hellraiser stood out because it had this demonic, intelligent, and reserved antagonist, which was just so opposite of the slasher-style movie of the time. But composed demonic evil is much more common now, so this type of villain isn't really all that unique anymore. The movie starts off as expected. Someone is tricked into solving the Lament configuration box. Then you see them get torn apart by chains and hooks as some rich guy demands an audience with Leviathan. And so far so good. That's pretty much how a Hellraiser movie should start. We're then introduced to the main character named Riley. Riley is an addict in recovery and she's living with her brother. He's getting annoyed with her because she doesn't have any money to contribute to rent and she's starting to become a bit of a burden. So to be less of a burden, she decides that she'll get drunk and help her boyfriend steal some art from his boss. Yeah, there's no way that'll ever backfire. They break into a safe and there's only one thing in there, the Lament configuration. She's upset because this didn't pay out the way that she was hoping it would, and then she gets busted by her brother for being drunk. They get into a big fight and then he kicks her out of the apartment. After that, she decides to take some pills because, why half-ass a relapse? If you're gonna fall off the wagon, you might as well go big. She solves the Lament configuration and then she blacks out. The blade, which normally would cut your hand and then lead to possession, misses. Her brother then shows up looking for her and accidentally cuts himself on the box. She really is a burden. The Cenobites get all angry at her because she didn't get cut by the box, so they don't get to possess her, although they can still for some reason communicate with her. And the boyfriend of her now missing brother is angry at her for kinda just sucking in general. Riley quickly realizes that the Lament configuration box had something to do with her brother's disappearance. This sends her and others into a series of actions looking for answers. The others are the friends of her brother who really exist just to die. It's kind of a classic horror movie thing, so I'm not going to talk about them at all. Pretty much every character except Riley gets cut by the box and dies. Her brother had some points. She really is a bad person to be around. Just being in this girl's proximity means you're going to hell. She is well-intentioned enough, but she really can't stop fucking up, and everybody around her ends up paying the price for her actions. Pretty much everyone dies except her, and then the credits roll. The story structure and the narrative quality are pretty much what you would expect from a Hellraiser movie, but there was one issue with it. Something about the Cenobites was kind of boring. And don't get me wrong, they looked really cool. I love the design. And I really like the way they were filmed. They kind of use this religious imagery thing, but they were just sort of boring in what they do. What made the original Cenobites so interesting was, although they looked and acted pretty evil, their language about what they were doing was kind of morally vague. It was very indifferent to the act almost. Their actions were always very objective. They just tortured the absolute shit out of you. They were intelligent and you were able to communicate with them clearly, but there was no way to negotiate what they were going to do to you. You are going to die, and it is going to suck. A lot. They're not driven by insanity or cruelty. They think that hurting you is good. They're sharing the realm of experience with you, and they think that that is their purpose. They view the prolonged and painful death that they're going to give you as a gift. There's a famous line from the original movies where Pinhead describes them as angels to some and demons to others. They're good or bad depending on your perspective, but in this movie it felt like they were too aware that they were evil. And while they do claim to be about the far regions of experience like the original Cenobites, they just kill you, right away. There's even this one scene where they're telling a character how her torture is just beginning, and then they immediately kill her. They could have cut that scene a few seconds earlier, and the implication would have been much more disturbing than what actually happened. Letting the viewer fill in the blanks with their mind would have allowed for a more personal experience of what her fate ended up being. Instead, you're sitting there and you're like, oh, okay, so she got killed immediately. That's not really that bad considering her situation. And much like the original movies, the Cenobites in this do seem to be restricted by rules, but they only follow them selectively. And I don't want to get really deep into the Hellraiser lore because, full disclosure, I don't know it very well, but they're only supposed to be able to cross over into our realm if you get cut by the box. They need that connection to cross over and to interact with you. But in this movie, the Cenobites can come over and harass Riley throughout the entire movie because she almost cut herself. I don't know, I guess close enough counts in hell? And one thing that really didn't make sense is one of the Cenobites then makes Riley cut her hand on the box, and they're like, oh, okay, like now we have you, you have to like sacrifice X amount of people or else we're gonna get you. And I just don't understand why that's a thing. Like, if you could make her cut herself, then what was this whole thing about being angry at her before and coming back and like yelling at her that the blade was meant for her? Couldn't you have just made her do that before? Like, did all of this have to happen if you were able just to interact with her even though she was never cut on the box? You could have just made her cut herself? I don't understand. Like, why didn't you just do that earlier? Why did all of this have to happen if you could just do that anyway? And also, isn't there like a whole thing in the Hellraiser universe where you're supposed to have the desire to solve the box and get something, and then that's what leads to your torture, not the actual just solving of the box? There's a very famous scene in one of the earlier Hellraiser movies where this girl gets tricked into solving the box, and the Cenobites come out and they're about to start torturing her, and then Pinhead comes out and he's like, no, not her. She's not the one that actually summoned us. It's not hands that summon us, it's desire. And I mean, they just disregard that rule like crazy in this movie. I watched this movie with my girlfriend, and she's never seen any of the earlier Hellraiser movies, so she found the whole experience to be very confusing with like, what's the point of the Lament configuration box? Why are the Cenobites doing this if they could just do these other things? Like, none of it really made very much sense to her, and that was all totally fair. I was pretty much able to follow this because of my previous knowledge of the series, but they definitely didn't make this one easy for new viewers. But despite the fact that I had some knowledge coming into the series, I still found parts of it confusing also. But ultimately, this movie did deliver 90% of what I was looking for. I saw new Cenobites and familiar ones, and they looked really cool. The story was really what any Hellraiser will be, and what it needed to be for the movie. Considering the one limitation of Cenobites is all the rules that they have to follow, it was a little weird to only follow them when convenient. I feel like the inconsistent application of the rules is going to make this a little bit less accessible for newer viewers, and maybe a little bit frustrating for existing fans of the franchise. But whatever, it's really not that important. People are definitely putting the old movies on a bit of a pedestal and being a little overly harsh with this movie. I've seen things online already where people are pretty much saying that this movie is like blasphemous to the Hellraiser universe. And just shut up. It's like seeing a Transformers movie and being pissed that something about how the robots work is different. You're here to see Cenobites do acts of crazy violence, and the movie delivers exactly that. Considering it's spooky season, I definitely recommend checking the movie out. Hellraiser movies always make for a good Halloween watch. The movie isn't going to change your life, but it is going to kill 2 hours with pretty cool visuals. If you enjoyed the video, hit like and subscribe. Go to my Patreon if you want to give me money. See you next time.